Joust. An early childhood favorite of mine. The classic tale of a lone ostrich-riding knight dueling it out against other rival ostrich-riding individuals and slaying them with your trusty lance. Or, most likely, your mighty bird buttocks. Joust is an early arcade classic from Williams and one of those games that was ported everywhere back in its day. The version I remember fondly and still enjoy to this day is the conversion on the Atari 7800 Pro system, and I believe this to be one of the finest conversions of Joust in the 1980s at least. However, Joust has been hosted on other Atari consoles, including the version we're going to look at today, the Atari 2600 video computer system. And if it isn't obvious from the get-go, this is a stripped-down interpretation of the John Newcomer classic arcade game depicting the endless struggle of folks riding ostriches attempting to kill each other with their bird asses of mass destruction. Yeah, sorry Mark. Despite its stripped-down form, the objective of Joust remains the same as always. You control an ostrich and have to destroy other ostriches to collect their eggs, which will float around in space for a short amount of time before hatching a more cunning ostrich. The eggs never touch the platforms, they simply float about in the air before hatching. Fair enough. As you progress through waves, platforms will disappear, pterodactyls will swoop in to clip your wings, every fourth wave has you collecting eggs for bonus points, and of course more skilled and dangerous ostriches will make your progress that much more difficult as you swoop through subsequent waves in the game. So obviously from the looks of things, this version of Joust isn't exactly the same as the arcade version. There's fewer platforms, the physics are somewhat floaty, and again, as mentioned, eggs float around during the egg waves. They don't stay on the platforms like they usually do. But there are some similarities in the gameplay, and for the most part, the core gameplay remains the same, as do some of the mechanics. Control here is actually not that bad, plays pretty well for the most part, and while it takes a while to get used to the physics of it, it's somewhat strange feeling, it's still fairly well done and pretty solid fare. Even within the limited graphical capabilities of the Atari VCS, Joust actually manages to nail the layout of the arcade game's playfield, albeit in a much simpler format. The details are missing, but you pretty much get what's going on. The various birds, platforms, and pterodactyls are simple, single-colored objects that move about, but you can easily distinguish them, make them out, and they do retain the shape of the arcade equivalents, even if the details are missing. Flicker aside, you can clearly recognize that underneath the low tech, this does look like Joust somewhat, as it should. Sound effects are also of decent quality, almost managing to replicate the arcade sounds, and doing a fairly decent job of it. No real complaints to be had here. Now I like Joust in general. It's a favorite game of mine, it's one of those games that I can enjoy on almost any platform. The 2600 version is obviously a far cry from an arcade-perfect experience, but it does manage to get the basics right while throwing in its own unique touches, due to hardware limitations of course. In fact, I would dare say that I got more enjoyment out of playing this stripped-down VCS version than I did playing the version on the NES, which I didn't think too highly of. Funny how things like that work out. There are better versions of Joust out there that do a better job of bringing the arcade game home, but Joust on the Atari 2600 is still a solid game all around, definitely one worth adding to the pile.